Welcome back to the deep dive. We often carry this fundamental expectation that when we commit to a path of personal growth or a spiritual practice, life is just supposed to get easier.
Right. The assumption is that the struggle should just vanish,
Yeah.
that the universe should reward you with smooth sailing.
Exactly. And that's what trips us up. The source material we're diving into today, it flips that script completely.
It really does. What's so fascinating is how it argues that success isn't, the absence of struggle. It's actually validated by the struggle.
So our mission today is to get into two challenging but I think incredibly comforting
Yeah.
ideas. First, this concept that spiritual tests aren't there to crush us. They're designed to prove our inner strength.
And the second one is the big paradox.
The big one. The closer you get to your goals, to that genuine internal peace,
Yeah.
the harder things can get, the more chaotic.
We're going to unpack why these really difficult situations are actually a crucial test of what the sources call Drutattvam, that unshakable resolve.
And we'll look at the practical strategy for it. Specifically, the power of silence against what the sources call tamasic influences.
Right. Forces like lethargy and confusion.
Let's start with that core expectation, because it feels almost like a betrayal, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
You start meditating, you commit to being a better person, and then bam! The world throws a catastrophe at you. You pray, you look for some kind of sanctuary, and instead of relief, the volume just gets turned up.
It's a universal feeling, and the source addresses it head on. It says the reality is just. It's counterintuitive. As you get closer to the divine, or just closer to real internal alignment, the challenges can become exponentially more intense.
But why? Why the difficulty? If the path leads to light, why does it suggest that the last mile feels like the darkest one?
Because we have to understand the nature of the test itself. The sources are so explicit about this. The test is not meant to defeat you. If it were meant to crush you, it would be designed differently. This is specifically calibrated to measure that resolve, that Drutattvam. It's like a fitness check for the soul, if you will.
And the opposition in this fitness check is identified as these tamasic influences.
Mm-hmm.
And for anyone listening, we're not necessarily talking about external demons, right? These are forces of inertia, of darkness inside and out.
That's right. When the source lists them, it's very specific. Lethargy, ignorance, and confusion. Just think about those forces that cloud your judgment or spark pointless arguments or just make you feel heavy and resistant to any kind of progress.
So the real test isn't whether our external problems have magically disappeared.
Not at all.
It's about our internal response to all that noise.
Exactly. The core question being asked is, how much do you truly believe in your path? Can you maintain your faith, your stillness, even when everything outside is screaming the opposite? It's a test of internal belief, not external circumstance.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting and I think so useful. This idea of things getting harder right before a breakthrough. Why does getting closer to peace trigger more turmoil? It feels so counterproductive.
It's not a contradiction, it's a desperate reaction. The sources explain this with the concept of Maya.
Illusion.
Yeah, often translated as illusion, but here, think of it as the sum total of all the negative forces, the patterns of chaos and distraction that have had a hold on us.
So when we choose a path of peace, we're basically cutting off their power supply.
You're withdrawing your energy, your allegiance. These forces of confusion, they recognize the threat to their own existence, to their influence over you.
So they fight back.
They marshal all their resources for what the source material calls the final battle. It is their last, most desperate attempt to recapture your focus and your energy.
Let's use an example. Someone's in a toxic job. They finally decide to leave. They start interviewing. And that last month,
Oh, it gets 10 times worse.
everything gets twice as bad. The passive aggression, the demands.
That is a perfect analogy. The system is sensing its loss. And the sources have this incredible, powerful image for this. They compare the final battle to a lamp, a deepam.
A lamp.
Yeah. It flares up, It gets intensely bright and hot right before it uses the last drop of oil and goes out completely.
Wow. So that peak chaos, that moment where you think, I can't do this anymore, that could actually be the flare. The sign that the problem is moments away from being gone for good.
If we connect that to the bigger picture, this intensification is actually a positive sign. It's proof that the negative influence is losing its footing. It's making its last, most dramatic stand because it genuinely feels threatened.
So if you're facing that extreme difficulty, the source is saying, don't see it as failure.
See it as an indication of an impending conclusion.
But wait, let me push back a little. How do we know it's the final battle and not just another bad week. Couldn't that just be a way to rationalize constant struggle?
That is a crucial question. And the distinction isn't in the external intensity, it's in your internal commitment. In a regular struggle, you're often oscillating. You're back and forth. Sometimes you're committed, sometimes you give in to the confusion. The final battle happens when your internal resolve, your Drutatum, has become genuinely firm.
So you're no longer questioning the path itself.
Exactly. You're just dealing with the violent residual reaction from the forces you're leaving behind. You feel that firmness inside, even as the world outside is shaking.
That reframes the entire experience. But if we fight back against that flare-up, we're just feeding it.
Right.
Meeting fire with fire often just makes the fire bigger.
Absolutely. If direct engagement is feeding the beast, what starves it? And that's where the sources get so practical.
What is that superior strategy?
Silence. What the sources call nishabdam. Not just physical quiet, but a profound internal stillness. It's presented as a far greater weapon than struggle.
So silence is a tactic, not as avoidance. How do you actually use that when you feel, personally attacked or just overwhelmed?
The key is non-reaction. The instruction is incredibly specific. Avoid unnecessary arguments, both the ones you have with others and the ones you have in your own head.
So every time we jump in to defend ourselves or explain ourselves against some trivial chaos,
You are literally handing the problem the fuel it needs to keep burning. The source is explicit. Negativity gets its power solely from our reactions.
wow.
When we stop responding, when we stop letting ourselves get triggered and dragged into it, the energy supply is cut off. Maya, this illusion, is parasitic. It cannot sustain itself without your active participation.
It's like a fight on social media. The trolls thrive on the replies if you just mute and walk away.
The conflict starves, exactly.
That's so hard to do in practice, though. How do we know we're being strategically silent and not just freezing up or avoiding something we actually need to deal with?
And that's the subtlety. Avoidance comes from fear, and it leads to stagnation. Tactical silence, nishabdam, is rooted in confidence. It actually leads to clear, decisive action when it's needed, but without the emotional chaos.
So if your house is on fire,
Stillness means you react calmly and efficiently. You call for help. Freezing is panicking and doing nothing. The stillness means the fire might be burning outside, but it's not burning you inside.
the goal then is to cultivate that unshakable inner core, what the Source calls Nishalavam.
That is the core practice. It's about maintaining deep peace in the inner soul, the antaratma, even when there's a hurricane outside. It's the difference between being a little boat tossed on every wave
And being the lighthouse.
and being the lighthouse that sees the storm but is fundamentally unmoved by it.
So the strategy is less about changing the external fight and more about controlling where you put your internal spotlight.
Yeah.
It's an act of radical internal sovereignty.
Exactly. You overcome Maya by deliberately shifting your attention away from the external chaos, all the drama and arguments, and focusing it intensely on the internal peace, the Antarika Shanti that's already there.
So this brings us to the ultimate measure of success. What does victory actually look like? Is it when all the problems are solved and we win every argument?
No, not at all. That expectation is what keeps us disappointed. True spiritual victory, according to the Source, isn't defined by changes in our external world,
But by the state of our mind.
by the permanent, unshakable state of our mind. You win when the outer chaos can no longer make you chaotic inside.
That's it. That's the whole game.
Absolutely. When we remain completely unmoved, Shalanchakunda Onapudu, as the text says, the influence of Maya just fades. The circumstances might not change overnight, but their effect on you disappears. They lose their power to wound you.
So the definitive victory is reaching a state where your internal peace just can't be disturbed, no matter how intense that final battle outside gets.
That is the achievement that truly matters. You shift from being a victim of circumstance to being the master of your internal response.
So we've done a deep dive into why spiritual progress can invite this final battle, this intense pushback from Tamazic forces. And we've established that this struggle isn't a sign of failure.
Right. It's often a sign that the old structure is about to collapse. And the core response isn't to fight harder, but to practice resolute stillness, to starve the negativity of its energy source.
The key takeaway for you, listening, is this. That intense difficulty you're facing might not be a sign you're moving backward. It could be that critical signpost.
It's the lamp flaring up right before the oil runs out.
And this raises a really important question for you to think about this week. If negativity and confusion only get their energy when we choose to respond, How many of the battles we fight every single day, at work, online, even in our own heads, could be instantly resolved or just starved of energy if we chose stillness instead of reaction?
That's something worth mulling over. The power to end the conflict might not be in your next move, but in your resolute tactical silence.
We hope this deep dive provides you with a new lens to view your own challenges. Until next time.